All right, well, let's talk about Dems and what's going on with them, because there are a lot of interesting developments. Let me go ahead and start with this. So AOC and Bernie have been doing this Stop Oligarchy tour, and they've been going to all these like super red places. I'm talking about like Idaho and Utah and getting insane crowds, bigger crowds than Bernie ever got in either of his presidential runs. And he was also famous, like Trump, for attracting significant crowds. Let's just take a look at a little bit of one of their recent rallies and some of the way he's interacting with AOC and also the energy of the crowd.
Now, I want to say a word about my daughter. No, I want to say a word about Alexandria and why what she's doing is so important. And here's the story. 6 years ago, what were you doing for a living? She was a waitress. But she looked around her and she saw a society that was fundamentally unjust and in many ways ugly to the people in the community in which she lived in New York City. She stood up and took on one of the most powerful people in the House of Representatives. And she started with almost no money against the guy who had unlimited funds, and she beat him. Okay.
We saw it just happen with Trump's corrupt and disastrous and rushed tariff scheme. We saw Marjorie Taylor Greene buy that dip. I got one question for her. How much did you make? How much did you make off of people's despair? How much did you make off that panic? How much did you make off of that suffering? No more. We can't accept it.
And I think, Emily, what you've seen as Bernie and AOC, they were first out of the gates. They launched this tour. They've been all over the country. They're attracting these just absolutely blockbuster crowds everywhere. They're putting up a fight. They have a strategy. And then you see the centrists like Chuck Schumer, who are completely adrift, have nothing to say, out of touch with the moment, putting up no fight, capitulating to the Republicans in the one moment that they have leverage, et cetera. And watching this dynamic play out has completely shifted the Democratic base in ways that we have not seen before, where they are disgusted with their own leadership, very different from last time Trump was in office, where Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff and all these people were heroes. And now that is also being reflected in who they see as the leaders of the party and in what direction they want the party to shift. So this is one of the fascinating dynamics that's playing out. And I think what was important about that clip where Bernie says, my daughter, Alexandria,
yes.
Like, first of all, he clearly loves her. He's not a warm and cuddly guy. No, to have that level of affection from Bernie Sanders, that's very telling.
Yeah.
And number two, people have been asking who's Bernie's successor? Who's he gonna, anoint to lead this movement going forward? I think we have our answer. He has picked AOC. That is the person he is elevating, and I think very likely will be the person he pushes forward in 2028.
Yeah, I think that's right. And actually, I teased this segment earlier in the show by saying Dems are in disarray, and I still stand by that, but both parties are always in disarray. The reason I stand by that here, though...
And should be, by the way. They should be in disarray.
Totally agree with that. But the reason I stand by this here is, what Bernie and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez are doing here is showing the establishment of this is as much a message to all of those people in the crowd and to people who support them as it is to Democratic elites who really, really, really don't want to hear this. But it's going to get hard for them not to hear it. And I know this is going to be a little bit out of order. But the reason I want to kick to James Carville, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, Krystal, is because he's proposing that the economic populist Dems break away from the sort of, he wouldn't use this phrase, centrist Dems, but I think that has to be accurately described as centrist Dems, what he's talking about. He's sort of saying the third way Dems should own the Democratic Party and everybody else should be in another party. And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has said herself, if we were in Europe, Nancy Pelosi and I would not be in the same party. And that these two poles, Carville is just proposing a total divorce of. And the reason I want to kick it to this with that, and I'm curious for your thoughts, is that is not even good for the movement he wants to succeed. Like, you're just asking for everyone to agree on pronouns and neoliberal economics. So anyway, let's roll Carville, and then we can get into some of this.
That most of the things at the faculty lounge that Identity Left wants, 85% of them, I want to. We'd like to expand opportunity for people. We'd like to expand people that have health care. We'd like to do more to help young voters. We think that environmental problems are totally crushing that we face. We want solutions there. We think income inequality is a terrible thing, and we've got to do certain things to address it, like, okay, we can raise taxes on incomes over $400,000 a year, raise the minimum wage. These are things that we can work on. I don't think we can work together on pronoun politics. I don't. I think that you're not. This election did not teach you how damaging that is. I don't think there's anything that I can tell you. And you say this guy is stuck in another century, not another decade, and he represents nothing to do with the future of our movement. I can accept that. You're not really going to hurt my feelings. So maybe we could have a kind of amicable split here, and we'll go to post in 2026, because you don't ever run, they never run against a Republican. Okay. All they do is run against other Democrats. I don't quite understand why you're so anxious to have the word Democrat in the description of what you do, but maybe we can have a amicable split here.
Krystal, this is a very bad time for James Carville to be making this argument, because the split screen is AOC and Bernie Sanders drawing record crowds in red states.
Right. And you want them out of your coalition? Like, what are we talking about here?
On a message of economic populism, quote, fighting oligarchy.
Right. Because here's the thing, as like, previously, AOC would have been the emblem of that like faculty lounge language that he talks about. Okay. She's out there like Marjorie Taylor Greene's insider training and stop oligarchy, and they're coming for your Social Security and your Medicare. Like, she is fully on the economic populist message. And, Bernie always has been more or less fully on the economic populist message. So talk about being out of touch and missing the moment. And also, by the way, if you're like setting up your tent pole of who wants to come over to the James Carville version of the Democratic Party versus the AOC and Bernie party, I got to tell you, there aren't going to be a lot of takers on your side, because even people like MSNBC, Nicole Wallace, I'm hearing things coming out of their mouths that I never in my wildest dreams would have imagined, because they, I think, were chastened by the fact that Joe and Mika made their trip to Mar-a-Lago and there was such a massive backlash and the network was sort of like cratering. And they took their cue of like, okay, we have to at least align with the part of the Democratic Party that wants to stand up and fight back against Trump, because otherwise what are we even doing here? Like, why do we even exist? And we will have 0 people watching us and they will all hate us. So they've followed the ratings. And the people who are demonstrating, as you said, how to fight and putting on the class for all of the Democratic elites are AOC and Bernie. So you even have people like Nicole Wallace, who is out there, former George W. Bush spokesperson Nicole Wallace, out there praising the Bernie and AOC Stop Oligarchy tour. Take a listen.
And we should say AOC and Bernie Sanders have been traveling the country and generating crowds that size, Christy, all over the place, and not just in Democratic strongholds. There is an appetite for economic populism that there hasn't been in many years.
And here comes AOC. We have the next element we could put on the screen. This is a poll. Look who's catching up in these numbers it's obviously early, but look who's catching up in 2028 Democratic primary poll numbers from Yale. We've got Kamala Harris at 28%, AOC at 21%. 21%. So, Krystal, to your point, if Bernie chooses Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez as his heir, man, things are going in quite a good direction for populists on the left. We can put the next poll, this is the next element, we can put this next poll up on the screen. Among Democrats, here are the net favorables. AOC is up 62%, plus 62%. Harris, plus 59%. So that's close, but Harris right now probably, she's just getting off a presidential run, so that's even a failed presidential run with name recognition and all of that. It's
just kind of like the default, yeah.
Yeah. But
and then you see who's there at the bottom.
Pritzker.
Stephen A. Smith and John Fetterman.
Yeah. But anyway, the argument that, and I will say, Bernie and AOC, I think, have learned from the last 4 or 5 years in politics and are not leading with identity messaging in a way that I think AOC genuinely did struggle with. Ryan documents that in some of his book. That really was a stumbling block for some left populists. But I think, and maybe the right is underestimating this, they have learned from that. And James Carville is underestimating that too, yeah.
Apparently, I'm like, who are you even talking about? The pronouns are on the bio. You won. That's,
Yeah.
Go look at who is the emblem of that sort of politics. And she's touring the country, getting massive crowds, many of whom were not Bernie supporters, talking about how we're going to fight back against oligarchy. And
probably Trump supporters, by the way.
Yeah.
No, some of those people there probably are Trump voters.
Very possible.
In Idaho,
very possible. If you're going to Idaho, there's going to be some likely Trump supporters there.
Yeah, 100%.
And, the thing that to me is even more noteworthy because, it's one poll, whatever, who knows, other polls have said other things, et cetera. But the thing to me that was even more noteworthy is if you could put the last element up here on the screen. As long as I've been following these polls, when you ask Democratic base, do you want the party to move to the left, to move to the right, or to stay the same? They generally say they should be more moderate. Now, I've always said, usually people's version of moderate is they should increase Social Security and they should increase the minimum wage. It's very economically populist. But, maybe that was cope. I don't know. So in January, end of January of this year, that continued to be the trend. 45% of Democratic base voters said they want the party to be more moderate. Only 29% said more liberal. Now, in a new poll, things have completely shifted. Now you have a majority, 50%, who say they want the party to be more progressive, 24% who say that it should stay the same, and only 18% that say it should become more moderate. Now, again, I think these terms are very squishy. The one poll says liberal, the other says progressive. Maybe progressive is better branding, et cetera, et cetera. But when you see this big of a shift, I do think it signifies something going on here. Because again, who are the people that they're seeing who are actually fighting? This is all the Democratic base wants. They want people to fight back against Trump. And who is fighting back against Trump? It's the progressives. So they're like, yes, we need to do that more. And I think that is what is causing this real sea change within the Democratic base and their conception of who their leaders are, who their leaders should be, and the way that the party should orient itself going forward.
James Carville got Bill Clinton elected so we could get on the path to WTO. It's just
Well, and not to mention, Emily, his whole thing they only run against Democrats. DLC was all about taking over the Democratic Party and kicking out the establishment Democrats.
Yeah.
So there's a lot there.
The last thing I'll say is this just reminds me so much of what happened on the right in 2012 after Mitt Romney lost. The Republican National Committee at this time under Reince Priebus, if I'm remembering correctly, put out what is known infamously in Republican circles as the autopsy. And that autopsy called for the Republican Party to quote unquote moderate on issues like immigration, social stuff. And you can, if you read it now, you can tell it's just sort of dripping with anger over kind of Tea Party voters. And what that missed is Republican voters, to the exact point that you were making, actually some of this populist stuff is moderate to voters. It's not moderate to DC because it's fairly radical for the clients of many people in Washington, DC, and the influences in Washington, DC. It's radical to their bottom lines and to the way that they do business, but most people would be like, oh, campaign finance reform? That's not radical. That's totally normal.
Everybody having health care. That seems moderate, like that seems like something we should reasonably do. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, Washington is just completely out of touch when it thinks that something, that is like the dumbest statement in the world because it's so obvious at this point. But when it thinks that, tune into Breaking Points for these stellar insights about how Washington is out of touch. But in all seriousness, they never learn. And that's what we could do. This pattern just doesn't stop. And James Carville should look at what Republicans did in 2012 when they said the only way to win presidential elections is to moderate on immigration and social stuff. And then Donald Trump beats Hillary Clinton on a platform of political incorrectness and building a wall. I mean, they're so stupid. They're so stupid. And they can't stop being stupid. And isn't it Carville's statement? It's the economy, stupid. Isn't that his? Yeah, that's him.
And this has been the case. This has been the case since the advent of the rise of the Bernie movement. You see the energy for this guy. You see how powerful this is. I mean, the number of people who gave him $10, $20, whatever they could. Yeah. The agenda that they rallied around, that they would show up, they would knock doors, they would do anything for him. And you want that out of the party? Yeah. That really is a big part of where they went sideways. Instead, you're going to foist on us Hillary Clinton. You're going to foist on us Joe Biden. Joe Biden, even more so than Hillary Clinton, because she did have some genuine supporters who are excited, first woman president, et cetera, et cetera. Joe Biden had none of that. And then you're like, oh, why aren't we cool anymore? Why doesn't anyone want to talk to us? Why did all these, bros that we spent years maligning as being toxic and smearing relentlessly, how come they don't want to support us anymore? Oh, gee, I wonder what caused them to shift away from you. And so once again, here you have just very clear example of where the energy is in the party. And you still have people like James Carville. And I would say also the Ezra Klein abundance movement thing. No, not that thing which is garnering massive amounts of energy and which people are responding to in real time. No, that can't be the message of the party. It's sometimes you have to put the think tankers aside. Sometimes you have to even put, some of the focus group tested popularism stuff aside and just see where's energy, what works. And, the Democratic base is going to have a say in the future direction of the party. And it's very clear right now what direction they are heading in.
By the way, some of those bro podcasters, Rogan, for example, support universal health care. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's why Bernie sat down with him. It's such a mess. And their solution is exactly what the Republicans was in 2012. And Trump woke the Republican Party up to what their base actually wanted. So that's what AOC and Bernie Sanders are trying to do in a less Trumpian way. We'll see how that goes. Let's move on, Krystal, to housing. Speaking of things Democrats struggle with, and get to our guest.
Hey, if you liked that video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Breaking Points.
If you want to see the rest of Counterpoints, go to breakingpoints.com to become a premium member and get the full uncut show every morning in your inbox and on Spotify.